All right, and the live counter is ticking, which means we are live, which means what is going on, comic book guys and gals on the internet, and welcome to Joe's Geek Show. And joining me today is my good buddy Dark Knight Nation. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for inviting me on. It's always good to shoot the shit and talk funny picture books with you, man.
Oh, dude, absolutely, absolutely. So basically, the whole thing about today is we're going to talk about controversial comic book moments. This is something I've been wanting to kind of I've been kicking around in my head for a while, and I thought it'd be just a really fun and interesting topic, and I'm like, man, I'm sure Dark Knight would get a kick out of this too. I figure it's a good time to just kind of get together, unwind a little bit, drink an energy drink or two, because I'm tired as shit right now.
Dude, I had to make myself some iced coffee, man. It is hot and I need the caffeine, so.
Amen, amen. And it looks like we already got Just a Reekin and his comics in the comics section. He says, "Yo, dudes, how you doing, sir? Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream." So just a quick breakdown of how essentially we're going to do this. So we've basically put together a list of different comic book moments that that are essentially considered controversial. And they could range from really big, huge things to some of the more small, minor things, but definitely worth bringing up. So with that, since you are my guest, I'm going to go ahead and let you kick us off, sir. What do you have for us today?
Sure. So first, I just want to say hi back to Rod. He said sup to both of us again. So what's going on, Rod, man? Good to see you. Hope you're doing well, bud.
Oh, and then got my friend Maria from Approach the Nerd. How you doing, girl? She says just finished her stream, so just in time for ours. So hey, thumbs up. Good to have you all here.
Cool. Well, then let's bring it. Let's make it worth it. So comic books for the 80 plus years, they've been in print, have seen a number of controversy. And I think controversy, a lot of it was kind of stemmed from the fact that the periodical nature of the industry forces these publishers and these writers and creatives to make very, very rushed, rash decisions in order to, make sales. And what better controversy to talk about than resetting the entire DC universe in 2011 with the New 52?
Yes.
It served as a good jumping on point for a lot of people. Somewhat myself included. My first exposure to comics were pre-New 52 books, but when I became a Wednesday warrior of sorts, the New 52 was in full swing, and those were the first books that I went to the comic book store on Wednesdays to pick up my books. So now looking back on it as more of a veteran fan, it's a very mixed bag, and I think controversy is most stemmed by two very heated sides and two very strongly worded arguments on either side. And that's certainly it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it's interesting to start with the New 52 because, I've been reading comics, a few years prior to that. But one of the things that I always found interesting about, the start of the New 52, which is what you were talking about too, it's a good jumping on point. It was a chance to actually get that Batman #1, that Superman #1. It's the second time it's ever happened.
Right back there, first 3 issues of the New 52 Batman graded back there.
Boom, there you go. I like it. So it was definitely something very interesting to have. Of course, the flip side to that is you have those collectors that were even more long-term than us, that were just like, what about all of our numbers? By that point, Batman was like in the 600s or 700s.
700s.
Yeah, it was up there. I remember Batman issue number 666. I actually have that issue. I got that one fresh off the stand when it was released. And to just see an entire continuity get wiped clean was fascinating. Just how people were reacting to it.
Well, I think especially because they were so sort of nondescript about what was still in continuity and what wasn't. They played really fast and loose. Because the continuity god Jeff Johns was working on Green Lantern. Green Lantern got to keep everything from the Johns era moving forward, and the Johns era kept everything before that and just kind of retconned a few things to make sense of it. So the Green Lantern had full continuity. Batman did until it wasn't convenient for a specific writer to have, Nightfall or whatever, or Tim Drake's origin. So a lot of kind of Batman tangential characters ended up having their histories changed. But Batman's really just felt like it was condensed into about a 5-year window, which there is a very high suspension of disbelief that comic book fans, especially DC and Marvel comic book fans, have to have. But when you decide to try to squish all of that within 5 years, that's when things got a little bit wobbly, because that means that, Batman was going through one of his most famous stories at least once a week. So, it's it was weird. And that ultimately kind of comes down to editorial, which I think is what a lot of these controversies come down to, either them pushing something that doesn't make a lot of sense, or them not saying no to a stupid idea. And the New 52,
just kind of not caring about what's being pitched.
Yeah, absolutely. And the New 52 was the brainchild of Dan DiDio, and for better or for worse.
Yep, that is exactly true, and I think that's a very good jumping off point. All right, so I'm gonna come down to another one, and I figure, you know what, I'm just gonna come swinging out the gate with the controversy surrounding the Avengers issue number 200.
Oh, is that the Ant-Man and his wife?
No, that is the story with Ms. Marvel. I'm sure you've heard this one before. Oh, this is the one where Ms. Marvel, in some capacity, gives birth to a son after miraculously conceiving a child, which is the same guy that throws mind manipulation on her and convinces her to go into a portal, let's go live here forever. And this was a story that was so controversial. I mean, Marvel was getting so much hate mail because it was so crazy, because you had Ms. Marvel forcibly giving birth, some of the characters just kind of saying, just kind of deal with it, I guess. And then even though she's getting mind manipulated, they're applauding at the end, yeah, you go do you, girl.
I don't know if it's for some reason I thought it was even worse than that. Don't you find out that the person that she conceived the child with or whatever was actually the future
version of himself?
Yeah, of her son. That's the worst part.
Yeah, it got so crazy. I remember myself. Can you imagine putting yourself in the shoes of a comic book reader right then and there? You had been reading the Avengers, and all of a sudden, this just comes across, your reading table, and you're just like, what just happened?
Yeah, no, that's some shenanigans. I don't even know. There are a couple things that we talked a little bit about that really is comic books trying its hardest to be edgy, and them totally misunderstanding what edgy is. Because this was the thing that surprises me most about this issue is, wasn't it co-written by Jim Shooter? Someone please feel free to correct me in the chat. But it's man, that's just not something that I would have ever thought Jim Shooter to come up with. I don't know, because it was a big issue, so maybe it had multiple writers and maybe it wasn't Jim Shooter, but boy, oh boy, whoever thought that was a good idea needed to get fired ASAP.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Though I will say the one saving grace to the whole thing was essentially the storyline about her coming back and leading to her time on the X-Men to becoming binary and stuff like that. I'm trying to remember X-Men writer. What was his name at the time?
Are you talking about the X-Men writer?
Days of Futures Past, yeah.
Chris Claremont.
Thank you. Goddamn, Chris. Can't think today. Yeah, the storylines that he came up with all that stuff. That was, that was at least he was able to take a negative and turn it into a positive. But still, yeah, man. I mean, it's just freaking nuts altogether. And we also got Tevia Smoka in the chats. How you doing, sir? Welcome.
What's
Looks
up,
like
bud?
they're talking. Oh, looks like they were talking about Superman's farmer genes in the New 52 when the time where he lost his powers briefly.
No, I think even before that, because in Action Comics,
It was
remember
Action
Grant
Comics,
Morrison? Yeah. Grant Morrison had put him at the beginning of the New 52 in a t-shirt, a cape, and jeans.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know much about that because, back then I became a retroactive Superman fan, and I know Tevia is going to be leaping on the moon when I say this, but it was Peter Tomasi and Pat Gleason's Superman run that made me a fan of the character, and that's what made me go back. So everything before Tomasi and Gleason's Superman that I've read was cherry picked. I didn't have to force myself through all the garbage. So I assume that he's talking about the beginning of the New 52 Superman. He could also be referencing that Greg Pak run during
that's what popped into my head was when they dropped the 52 and went with the DCU branding.
That was horrible, man. That wasn't necessarily a controversy because I think that was just kind of widely berated. Like DC gave us, like they really mixed up the Trinity in the main kind of line, the seven of sorts in the Justice League, and then it's a nugget.
Yes.
And so they also kind of gave us a bunch of ideas for books that like we thought we really wanted, and they just didn't put the right people on them. Like there was a Dr. Fate book, a Clarion book,
yep.
And like me as at the time an up and coming comic book fan, I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. Like I'm gonna get to touch all these characters that I remember watching in like Justice League as a kid or Young Justice as like an adolescent. And then the books just kind of sucked. So.
Yeah. I mean, I remember a lot of those DCU things. Like Commissioner Gordon was Batman for a little while in his bunny bat suit.
Hear me out, though.
Oh no, I was gonna say I actually did like it.
I did like it. It reads much better in trade, like significantly better. I think the idea was good. I just think that it went on for way too long. Because I think it was like 10 months or so, or 10 issues, which at the time
it was a few. Yeah, it was a few issues, and this is when the books were monthly instead of bi-weekly.
Yeah,
besides
the fact that was kind of the era in the New 52 when they did like a big like line-wide event. There would be like a gap month for them to do like one-shots and stuff. So like during Future's End and things like that. I remember there being like random 1 month gaps that pushed everything out longer, and that was a weird time for me to be getting into monthly comics because I'd be like, oh my God, the next issue of Batman. And then it's like Future's End Batman #1. I was like, no, this is not what I wanted.
Yeah, but however, I will say Mr. Bloom was awesome. They need to bring him back.
He's a dope villain. There's that man, little side tangent. That one issue, I think it was drawn by Sean Murphy, or at least the cover was, where it was Batman. I think it was during 0 Year. It was like a flashback issue where they're setting up how Bloom became Bloom and about like the gangs and like the corner store. Like great issue. So good. If you guys want to get like a taste for that kind of era and still kind of get Bruce back during that storyline, such a good story.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, well, now it is your choice again, sir. What do you have for us?
So I feel like this one's kind of obvious, and I actually thought I thought this was going to be the first thing you were going to say. Spider-Man One More Day.
Oof. It is on my list. Yeah.
Yeah. No more Mary Jane marriage. He sells it in order to save Aunt May, who is already old as dirt. I don't know. To me, like the thing that I think that fundamentally that it got wrong was not just like depriving the relationship, but why they did it. Because Peter is one of those characters that pretty much has to learn lessons the hard way.
Yeah.
I feel like he's already learned the lesson to let go. And to me, I just don't. And I'm not even a huge Spider-Man guy, but I have more faith in Peter Parker to say that I don't think that he would have sold his marriage and his love that could have spanned the rest of his life away for an 80-year-old. Well, Aunt May had been like 80 for like 40 years. You know what I mean? At that point. So yeah, it seemed like a mishap on the character. And what really kills me is that one, it was Marvel editorial forcing something down J. Michael Straczynski's throat,
Mm-hmm.
whose Spider-Man run was almost flawless otherwise.
Yeah.
And B, that was the first time in JMS's Spider-Man run that we finally got great art. I think it was Michael Turner. I could be wrong. But we got great art because we had gotten John Romita Jr. the rest of the run, and then we get garbage story. So you just can't win.
Yeah, totally. I do, yeah, and I agree with that. You know, I mean, Spider-Man One Day was such an interesting because, like, wasn't that also done to sort of undo the identity reveal from Civil War as well? It's like, okay, well, we got to get Spider-Man back to the status quo, but how do we do that without, completely changing, all of Marvel Comics essentially? So it's like, oh, well, let's just have him make a deal with Mephisto. And I agree, and I feel like Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker, by that point had learned, those lessons where, yeah, he would have just said, okay, well, my aunt had a good run, but it's time to move into the future with my wife, family and all that stuff.
Yeah, to me, I think that, I don't know, this is just a wannabe, like the wannabe writer's brain, that
Mm-hmm.
if they really wanted to set up a situation that challenged Peter and that scarred him, because Peter is one of those characters that his character kind of relies on constantly. I'm really glad you have headphones in so the kid doesn't hear this. Constantly being shit on in order for him to move forward, right? He is kind of this heavily strong-willed, like the metaphor of the spider is that he is a small man who can ultimately carry all this weight, right? And there's an emotional weight, a physical weight, a psychological weight of being Spider-Man. And to me, if you wanted to pose the question, I think that you could have done One More Day situation where he decides to keep his marriage, but the thing that scars him is that he never got to say goodbye to May.
Mm-hmm.
And that should have taught him to value his relationships and to make sure that he's maintaining them and to keep those as sacred as he does his identity of a crime fighter. I don't know. Who knows? Marvel, I'm ready. You can hire me. I'm here for it.
You heard that, Marvel? You got hire him tomorrow. There we go.
I'm here for it. But yeah, One More Day, man. It fundamentally to me kind of was obviously a cash grab, B, just a horrible misinterpretation of the character, and C, undervalues Spider-Man. Like I said, I'm not a huge Spider-Man guy. Spider-Man's not in my top 10 characters. Like, that might be kind of a heretical to say, but I still think that by essentially saying that we only value Spider-Man when he's a teenager doing teenager stupid things, just discounts the growth of the character completely.
Oh yeah, like I agree. Let's say we got Tevia here saying, "Except One More Day messed up Spider-Man continuity so much it ruined Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and Mary Jane for a literal decade."
And more, a little bit more than that.
Like more than that. Because didn't they just get back together like at the start of the Nick Spencer run? Are they still together in the Amazing Spider-Man?
I think they like teased it at the beginning and then followed through like a couple of months later. I don't know. Okay. I'm not really in love with Nick Spencer's Spider-Man, so.
Well, that's how it goes. And hey, speaking of Nick Spencer, let's go to the next one. How about Hydra Cap?
Yeah.
There we go. I mean, it was a tease in the thumbnail. So figure, why not talk about that one aspect of Nick Spencer's Captain America run, his first issue ever. You got Steve Rogers back in the role as Captain America. You get to the very end of the book, and it's Captain America saying, "Hail Hydra," which eventually led forward into the Secret Empire book series, which, I mean, yeah, love it or hate it, it happened. Not much we can do about that.
Yeah. Quick aside, I saw Maverick MX in the chat just saying it's great to see us both. It's good to see you too, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for joining us. Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to say that before I forgot about it because I have the attention span of a peanut.
Oh God, I feel you there. But yeah, like I remember picking up this issue, and when I hit that moment, like it was a mind blowing moment, and it was just like the very next day or even hours later, it seems the internet was just getting bombarded with people being like, how could you do this? What's going on? Captain America is, he's not a Hydra. He's not a Nazi. What's going? He fights these guys and stuff like that. And like, and I have, there are some people I know, particularly because I was still in the military right about this time too. And yeah, there was a lot of like, a lot of my military buddies that are just like, that has got to be one of the most ultimate portrayals to the character, even on a storytelling basis, just because of all the things that he's done and what he stands for. The fact that you had, American GIs reading Captain America books during World War II and stuff like that. I don't know. What's your take on that one?
So, yeah, I mean, I actually didn't like the execution and the follow through, but that last page of that issue is probably one of the best stingers that one of the last page stingers that we've seen in comics in decades. Like that was so good. They got New York Times page space. They got they even got American television coverage. It was huge. The thing that kills me about it was, again, the follow through, the way that it got really, it got really convoluted. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. But the idea, right, of kind of questioning the legitimacy of Cap's goodness is a really good story idea. And I mean, there's a lot of bias, right? Because Captain America is an icon and represents a number of things to a number of different people, including, the men and women in the armed forces. But I don't think that the idea of it is ultimately a betrayal of the character, because you have to write stories that are going to challenge these icons, or else they're going to get boring. I would hate to read the same thing over and over again. I get tired of reading Cap as the same character. Sometimes you have to take those boundaries and push them without breaking them completely. So there are a number of ways that they could have done the whole he was manipulated thing. Maybe when he was old, because right before that, Captain America had gone through this, year-long span where Sam Wilson was Cap because the super soldier serum stopped the de-aging process, and he was like 80-something years old. You could have told a story where somebody got to him and pretty much brainwashed him. You could have done Cap as a secret spy, and this was supposed to be, an espionage story, kind of similar to the nature of the Winter Soldier. There's a lot that they could have done with it, but you could tell that Nick Spencer had an odd idea that Marvel wasn't willing to commit to because of all the media coverage. They got really reactive.
Yes.
And who's to tell as to whether or not Nick Spencer's original plan would have followed through, because it was very evident that there were a lot of last-minute changes done to that story because of all the eyes that were on it. So as an end product, I didn't love it. The idea I thought was really cool. There was a lot of really great beats in that story that could have turned into something fantastic. Like Secret Empire, I vehemently think that if executed better, could have been one of like the all-time great Captain America stories. And it could have been a really kind of excellent landscape to challenge the character and what he means. So do I think the idea of toying with him and the Hydra Cap thing is inherently kind of conflicting to who the character is? No, not at all. I think that's a lot of people's biases talking. Now, if you were to follow through and say they were to never have kind of tried to clarify why and how his, like the circumstances that made him think that way with the Cosmic Cube, or however, whatever the way Nick Spencer was going to pursue that prior to whatever happened, then it could have been pretty bad. But I just think that there's a lot of bias that comes through. I remember people judging it before it even came out, and it's like, just read the story and then come up with your and then make your intuition, or you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I exactly hear you, and I like how you illustrated too about last minute changes, because I remember reading a few different articles and interviews with Nick Spencer where he said, I mean, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was basically to the effect of, this book will not end with a fist fight between good Cap and bad Cap, but that's essentially what it ended up happening. So, which gets me wondering too, what was his original intention? What was his original story? Which then, of course, due to the media coverage and seemingly the backlash from it, that caused the changes in the first place. Wait, what was the original intention? I mean, do we need to do a hashtag release the Spencer cut or what?
Jesus, please don't. Let's not gratify that again. My God. Yeah, it's a weird scenario, and you could tell that. I mean, I did a stream a couple weeks ago. I think it was actually my stream that we did controversial comic book opinions, and no, it wasn't that one. It was another one where we had brought up how the entirety of 2017 for Marvel was an absolute mess, and Secret Empire was certainly a part of it. And I think that.
I've heard you talk about that one a few times, I think, on a few streams. I know you and Boom brought it up a couple times.
I'm trying to remember what stream. Oh, no, I don't remember. Who knows? It was a recent stream within the last couple months. But the big issue is that I think that Marvel felt the need to react because they had just gotten dragged through the mud all of 2017. And by the time Secret Empire started catching waves and started becoming a controversial book, at that point, I can only imagine that Marvel editorial was like, you got to change it. Like Captain America can't be a Nazi under any circumstances. Like we got to change it. No, we happy ending. Everybody, we need some Disney magic up on this bitch. And so then everything changed. So I wonder what would have happened if 2017 wasn't already a controversial year for Marvel. Like, would they have pulled through?
Yeah, and yeah, that's a very good question too. Would they? Could they have pulled through? Dude, it's hard to say because you basically digging into the what ifs on the scenarios. It's way too hard to say because the medium in general is always in flux. You never know what's going to be hated. Really, you never know what's going to be a downright absolute success until it happens. Essentially.
Yeah, the thing about the comic book industry is it's so filled with what ifs because they're so desperate for sales that they're pretty prepared to pull the trigger on making statements and then redacting them and completely contradicting them, so on and so forth. And they don't, even if they want to make a switch on the turn of a heel, they don't quite have the time because of how quick comic books are published, unless it's quarantine. And clearly now, whatever 5G was going to be under DiDio is not that, and it's going to be whatever the hell Snyder wants to do at the end of Death Metal. So quarantine kind of afforded DC Comics to maybe take a step in the right direction, maybe not, who knows. But under normal circumstances, it becomes impossible. And when they get super reactionary, at that point, they'll both publishers have those scenarios. Well, they'll go through a huge state of flux and unbalance for a year or so because they can't catch their footing.
Oh yeah, and I think you even brought this up in another stream where sometimes it almost kind of seems like this too, where Marvel will do something that just catches the negative public reaction, and DC's doing so great, but then the tables will turn, and it's like one company will then do exactly what the other one just did and got the backlash for.
Yeah. I mean, literally, when rumblings of what 5G was going to be first made their way onto the internet, that was a huge thing because myself included, any self-respecting comic book fan is like, did we not learn anything from all new, all different Marvel? Like,
I know, that's exactly what I was thinking when the original 5G pitch was announced, and I was just like, what?
Yeah, are we not? The thing is, you're supposed to copy the other guy when they're successful. We get that, and fans will be mad, but at least you're going to make money. Otherwise, when you copy things that are proven not to work, I mean, you could pay me the six figures that you're paying your marketing or creative director, and I'll make the same mistakes. Sure. What the hell? Shit, I'll take half of what they make to make the same mistakes.
Half is great. I can dig half.
Yeah, it's insane, man.
All right. What else you got? What's your next pick?
My next one, I'm kind of flying off the cuff. I'm not gonna lie. What's a good? I'm gonna take a quick look at my bookshelf and see if anything springs to mind.
Oh man, I'm surprised. Normally you'd have notes and you'd be like,
I don't really do notes too much. Sometimes I do if it's like a big list, but then I was like we'll see how it flows. You know what was controversial, but ultimately turned out to be great was reviving Bucky Barnes and making him the Winter
Oh
Soldier.
yeah,
That
yes,
was
yes.
huge controversy. But the thing that I feel like makes this particular installment of our discussion unique is that it wasn't widely panned when it finished. I mean, there are certainly a group of people that are not proponents of Bucky coming back and becoming the Winter Soldier.
Absolutely not.
But I'd say a general majority of comic book fans love it, and that's why Captain America: The Winter Soldier, that entire Brubaker run, is by far the best and most highly recommended run of Captain America ever.
I agree, definitely. Because I actually collected the Out of Time in singles, even just because I loved it so much. I mean, when you get a modern day comic getting basically pitched into a movie, that's amazing. That's amazing. Bucky coming back, that was definitely one of the greatest things to, at least as we we're saying, to ever happen. Essentially, for the Captain America. I mean, plus Brubaker, it's just
and Steve Epting.
Yeah.
Epting's art.
I mean, Ed Brubaker is just Ed Brubaker. You gotta love him at all times.
And what's great is that spanned a very well. From what I've heard, that it didn't really inspire the choice over at DC, but they're very similar in nature in the way that DC brought back Jason Todd as Red Hood, another kind of controversy that I think was overwhelmingly positive. You can speak on whether or not Red Hood has been handled super well since he's come back, but Under the Red Hood is a great Batman story, and I would argue is definitely a top 20 Batman story of all time. And if you watch the film, the cool thing about the film is it was written by Judd Winnick, who also wrote the comic book story, and he was able to kind of cut the fat and get down to what it was at its most pure. I'd highly recommend watching that movie if you don't feel like reading the comic book art. But the comic book arc was also great. You had early Doug Mahnke art and Dustin Nguyen. Super great story. And I love Jason Todd Red Hood. I mean, especially as I've gotten older, and especially after I read the Robin 80th anniversary, it made me remember how much I like Jason Todd and how important Jason Todd is as a character and as a dynamic force in the Bat family. We had
absolutely.
Yeah, I'll plug our previous stream. Joey and I, when the Robin 80th anniversary came out, we did a stream on our favorite stories through that. And I think, did you also make another side video? Because I know I did.
No, I didn't do a side video on that one.
Gotcha.
It was just for me. It was just the stream, because I kind of felt like we said everything we wanted to say up in that stream, and stuff like that. At least for me, anyway. But yeah, I mean, I would say that, controversial, yes, but the death of Jason Todd definitely led to, like you said, Under the Red Hood, which was one of the greatest Jason Todd / Batman stories to come out, in years and stuff like that. I really, really dug it. And, and it's kind of interesting when you really think about it, it's like Bucky Barnes, Jason Todd, these are two stories where it's like you're reaching into the past in order to, essentially create a new character that, challenges the hero and stuff like that.
Yeah, Jason Todd is like infinitely better as Red Hood than he ever was as Robin. Like as Robin.
Absolutely. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, at least this is what my dad always told me, is that because my dad's a big comic collector too, and he's collected for years and stuff. He told me that when Jason Todd was Robin, everybody was always like, "Let's just kill that little shit."
That's funny. Yeah, I mean, he's clearly nobody's favorite Robin, but as Red Hood, I've seen a couple people who really take with that character, and he represents a lot. And again, that if you guys want a good like little Jason Todd, like really digestible story, man, that Robin 80th anniversary story, it's 8 pages or 10 pages, whatever, and it was just phenomenal. It just gets down to the core of.
I think we decried that was even the best story in the whole book.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. No, I would put it. And like, don't get me wrong, Peter Tomasi's story in that book was good, but it was head and shoulders above everything else, man. I mean, shit. Like, just every time I went through it and went all like super inspector and analytical comic book surgeon
Yeah.
in the book. Like I made like 3 people cry when I was like explaining it. And
Oh,
somebody,
absolutely. I mean,
yeah,
you actually, I mean, when I listen to your observations and stuff like that on that particular story, I mean, crap. I mean, you know how to dive into a book so well. Like, you picked up on so much stuff that I and like many others just completely overlooked because we're just like, I mean, when I read a book, I'm like, yeah, it's a great story, this and that, this and that. But then when you got into the bit about, the timepiece and all that, I was just like, that just makes you think about the story in a whole new context.
dude, that's kind of the goal of what I do. That's
Mhm.
what I aim to do, break that stuff apart and try to help people understand why comics are important and what they can do and what they're capable of, man. And in that 8 pages, I felt more touched and more emotional than I've been experiencing, any other story in a while. Television, film, comics,
Mhm.
prose, anything. So yeah, that gets down to the core of why I'm even on here talking to you about comics.
Yep, and then also we got Scott Neely. He says that Tomasi's Superman run was amazing too. Yes, it was, sir. Yes,
Hmm.
it was. We need Tomasi back on the book ASAP.
Honestly, there's a lot. I without going too far off, I think that they're going to give it to Wade. I think Mark Wade's coming back to write
You think
Superman.
Mark Wade's gonna come back to voice?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, and
it's
I'm open.
interesting.
I'm honestly at this point, I'm just so open to change that I know Mark Wade's track record hasn't been amazing as of the last couple of years, but I'm open to it. I'm definitely open to it. I think I don't know. Tomasi could write pretty much anything. I hope that they give him a book that he's able to do what he wants because with
Yeah.
Detective, I felt that especially after Detective 1000, they were like, well, you can't do anything too crazy with Batman because we got Tom King doing his thing, and then
Hmm.
we're gonna let Tynion do his Joker War thing. I'm just like, man, I miss those moves where like both the Batman books could run separately and span their own big stories or crossovers or whatever they want to do. That's the issue, man. Is that you got to put Tomasi in a position to make the change because 9 times out of 10, they're going to be good changes. Also, Maverick MX brings up a very good one. Robert Venditti on Superman. I'm not saying, that.
I would say I would agree to that. I mean, just because I actually really like just because I really like his the way his stories. I mean, of course, Hawkman and stuff like that, amazing. And even what he's doing on Justice League right now, I think is fairly interesting. Between the two stories that he's told so far,
Hmm.
I like the approach to it where he's focusing in essentially on one Justice Leaguer and exposing everybody else, to one hero's mythos,
Yeah, I
more
mean,
or less.
Venditti is one of the best writers that DC has right now. I absolutely love his work, and I've never read anything by him that I didn't like, or at least I've never read anything that was bad. I've read stuff that I wasn't in love with, but certainly nothing bad. And I was only saying Wade just because I feel like that seems to be the most likely with all of the chat of
Hmm.
Wade going back and rereading a bunch of old classic Superman stories,
Hmm.
Wade becoming, getting back in contact with DC Comics, Bendis reportedly being off the book soon. So while I think Wade is more likely, yeah, I mean, I would give my left. I had to figure out which leg had the better tattoos on it. I would give my left leg um, to get Robert Venditti on a long Superman run, man, because he's such a chameleon. He understands these characters. I mean, if you just want a good taste of him, his entire Green Lantern Corps run was freaking genius.
Hmm. Yeah, I actually have not read his Green Lantern Corps.
Highly recommend, dude.
I
Highly,
will
highly
definitely.
recommend.
I'll try to go check it out. Maybe I'll go to that bookstore I told you about and see if I can find the trades.
Do it. 100%. 100%
Pick it up
worth
for
it.
pick it up for like $4. That'd be awesome. All right, and so yeah, not to get too off topic. Okay, let's just keep the ball rolling, stuff like that with more comic books that made people just go, huh?
Mm.
Or it could be considered, controversial in a way. Have you read what is it? Kevin Smith's Daredevil run?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, this was one I was gonna bring up. The one where he throws a baby off the roof.
Yeah. I mean that kind of revolves around the central arc of Matt Murdock
Hmm.
trying to reconcile the sort of aggressive nature of Catholicism and the judgmental quality of religion with his humanity, right? Like, the one of the big overarching questions to that run was, Matt has a child that is kind of playing lone wolf and cub with a child that is supposedly the spawn of Satan.
Right.
Matt is a good Catholic.
Yeah.
What does he do with the baby? Because naturally, what, baby abuse is not a good thing. Like, I'm just going to throw that out there. But also, it's supposedly the spawn of Satan. What do we do? And that, I think, might have been a little extreme, but comics tend to hyperbolize pretty much everything in every possible way because they're two-dimensional images, so they need you to be left with a very direct impression of what's going on. And while I think it was a little bit extreme, I don't hate it because it really made Matt Murdock challenge himself as a character. And the reason I like Matt Murdock is because, he's Marvel's Batman, essentially. But you can make him a much shittier person than Bruce Wayne, and he can still come out on top. Like, you can do a lot with Matt Murdock. And in the same way that Peter Parker kind of relies on him making very questionable decisions and suffering for it, Matt Murdock is that same idea to the 10th degree.
Oh yeah, totally agree. And I'm glad someone else has read that story. I'm sure many have. I just don't talk to many people who have. But I will say, again, here's the thing. I actually always found it, even though like a lot of people talk about it, like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. I always found it as a very interesting marketing tactic to know that Matt Murdock threw a baby off the roof. Sparks in my mind. What made him do that? Which then makes me want to go read the run.
It's it's Kevin Smith. He made Batman points, so who knows?
That was actually on my list too.
I am so mixed on that. Like, part of me is like, like, it makes sense. Like, it's science. Like, you know what I mean? When Kevin Smith defends it, he's like, man, he's talked to multiple firefighters where they discuss kind of the biological happenings under that amount of stress and fear.
Yeah, the response of the human body to stuff like that.
Right, but it's also like, it's fucking Batman, bro. Like, I don't want to read a story about Batman pissing his pants. So, was it flawed on like a narrative standpoint? No. Like, I could see why you would include it. Do I want to read Batman pissing himself? Also, no.
Yeah, it's definitely a level where you're just kind of like, how much information is too much information? I can understand Batman talking to the guy. God damn, I cannot remember his name. It's been such a long time since I read that story. Do you remember the guy's name?
The onomatopoeia?
Well, yeah, but he was under an assumed name.
I don't remember.
Before he was revealed he was onomatopoeia. No? Okay. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, when Batman was talking to the guy, yeah, I can see it's like, he's trying to relate to him a little bit. It's kind of like, this is sort of like the crime fighting game, blah, blah, blah. But then he just drops that, and I'm just like, yeah. I'm sure any self-respecting crime fighter probably just lost a ton of respect for you.
Dog, they should have done commercials for like those Pampers, but for like not toddlers, but for like kids who wet the bed. But like, yeah, even Batman like pisses himself. That would have been such a great marketing tool.
Oh my God. Batman wears good nights because good nights means good mornings.
Good nights don't have to be dark.
Jesus Christ. Where did the stream go, man? What are we doing with our lives?
Worst part was I'm not even drinking. This is just coffee.
Oh yeah, which definitely gets me thinking, God, what could we do if we really started to get hammered?
Dude, I'm telling you, your one drunk night a year needs to be spent at least for an hour on the internet. Because I feel like it's your night and the wife can't say no. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's always the whole thing behind that too, is I'm allowed to drink as much as I want because I'm dry the rest of the year.
Dude, I'm telling you, that would be genius. You get you, me, and Comic Boom on pretty much the Earth 3 version of our comics and coffee just late at night, and instead of coffee, we're plastered and just taking the world by storm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I was talking about you with you yesterday. Actually, you do have an idea for a really good stream like that.
We're gonna be positing the big questions, folks.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be amazing. Okay, so unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time today, so we have time for about 1 or 2 more little mini discussions here. Do you have anything else off the top of your head that you would like to bring up?
Well, I mean, let's get this one out there. Spider-Man killed his wife with radioactive semen.
That was the top of my list. Congratulations, you hit my number 1. Yeah.
So, well, I mean, it's your number 1, man. You give it a go. You let the good people know.
Well, I think that's exactly. Well, I mean, dude, what else can you say? It's radioactive spider semen that killed his wife. I mean, it wasn't like it was the semen and stuff like that, but it caused her to have cancer. And I was thinking to myself, and that really was, for me, the premise for this whole thing too is like, that idea came across my head when I was rereading the story, and I thought to myself, it's I can see why it's controversial, and I'm wondering, for the sake of the story and stuff like that, to they need Mary Jane dead. Was that necessarily the best way to do it?
Yeah, it's weird because the kind of melancholy approach to the character kind of heading towards the end of his life was interesting, and it was the fact that it was Elseworlds kind of allowed for this different exploration of the character under these really, really dark contexts. But yeah, there's something about the radioactive semen that was like,
it's a little too specific, and I'm like,
and it's also, to me, something that makes such a profound an impact like that is at the fault of Peter Parker, should have had a little bit more resonance with the general themes. Like,
absolutely.
To me, if you wanted to tell that story, I think it would have been infinitely better. Again, amateur writer brain at work would be, why don't we challenge the fact that Peter Parker has always prioritized Spider-Man over Peter, and the balance never works. So while he's saving other people, he can't save Mary Jane, and Mary Jane dies because he prioritized being Spider-Man over being Peter. That would have resonated with the overarching themes that run through pretty much every Spider-Man story ever. And you could have had that same melancholy sort of approach to Spider-Man at the end of his days without the love of his life, because it is his fault. Just immensely less disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of almost what happened with the J.J. Abrams and Son Spider-Man, where, she was killed in the attack. And stuff like that.
That book will never end.
Yeah, because we've only had 3 issues.
Yeah, issue 4 has been solicited for like over half a year now.
Yeah, well, whether it finishes or not, still, that very beginning where Mary Jane is killed, yeah, in my head, when it comes to if Mary Jane was ever going to die, that's always how I saw her going out, was being killed basically in the line of fire or such because of Peter Parker and him being Spider-Man. Spider Semen was not the smart way to go about it.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I understand. Like you were saying too. I understand the idea of making her death his fault. So he has to carry that. And live with that for the rest of his life. Like, oh my gosh, basically it's Uncle Ben's dead because of me, and Mary Jane's dead because of me, and all that fun stuff.
Gwen,
Gwen Stacy. Yep, Gwen Stacy, and. Oh boy, that was a sad book too.
And Peter Parker's filled with controversy, because the last one I was going to mention, which I actually think it was in continuity, was when Gwen Stacy fucked the Green Goblin and had kids with him. That just makes me so uncomfortable.
And that was wasn't that like the night before she died too? Like the day before, or like a couple weeks before?
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the story. If someone knows it, let me know so I can publicly just denounce that story. But the fact that it was like supposedly a retcon in continuity, and like I think it was almost worse that it was consensual. Like,
yeah.
it was almost worse that, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people think that Identity Crisis is controversial because of the whole Sue Dibney rape scene, and I unapologetically love that story and will defend it. But like,
I'm reading that one right now.
it's very good. It's so very good.
I honestly don't know why. Like, I was hoping to bring it up in this stream, but like, well, let's kind of keep the ball rolling on this. Maybe we'll do a part 2 where we'll dig into Identity Crisis.
Dude, we could do a whole video on Identity Crisis. Shit, man.
Next video. There we go. We're just gonna talk about Identity Crisis. Perfect.
I'm here for it. But yeah, that was horrible. Like like I said, it was almost worse that she consensually had sex with the Green Goblin. It was just it gives me the heebie-jeebies just thinking about it.
I mean, she was in a relationship with Peter, so she openly cheated on him, and I don't even remember the reasoning behind that because I'm so focused on that event itself that I don't even remember the why. You know, not to mention, you know, you have Norman Osborn who was like, well, like 20 years older or some crap like that.
You know what kills me is that the creative team on that book was like phenomenal. I think it was J. Michael Straczynski and Mike Deodato Jr. And they were like, I mean, Mike Deodato is like one of my favorite Marvel artists of all time. And J. Michael Straczynski is pretty incredible. And that just kills me that those two got together and made such a horrible book.
Yeah, and Tevia just brought up, he says it's called Spider-Man Sins Past.
I love that he says that it has Gwen Stacy doing sex with Norman Osborn. Like, what a way to word it.
Hey, I say that's a perfect wording. You know, she's doing the sex with the Norman Osborn.
She's doing sex.
She's doing sex. Oh God! But yeah, Spider-Man Sins Past. Thank you, Tevia, for bringing that up. Now we can internalize that in our brain and just hate on it for the rest of our lives, thinking
that was a good one to end on.
I think that was a perfect one to end on. And unfortunately with that, I am sadly out of time. You know, that's why I don't do many streams, because I'm always crunched. Actually, I gotta we ordered what was it? We ordered dinner from Chili's. I gotta go pick it up. It's the dealio with that. I got me I got me a nice steak with a side of garlic mashed taters.
That's a vibe, bro. That's a whole vibe.
So with that, hey, thank you for everybody that came in today. We'll definitely get together. We'll do this again. We might do a part 2. Sounds like we're going to come in and talk about Identity Crisis at some point, which I think would also be an extremely fun and awesome conversation. Maybe next time we'll get Boom in with us, you know, because I'm sure he's read comics longer than both of us. So he probably got a lot to say too. And Dark Knight Nation, thanks again for joining me. And everybody, I left his link in the description down below. Go check out his channel if you haven't already, which I'm sure most people here already are, just because he is that awesome. So, sir, if you want to have any last minute words, that floor is yours.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for having me on. You know, no good things are done in excess, and that's why we got to get down to it for about an hour, man. So I want to thank you for having me on and for sitting down and shooting the shit and making fun of Spider-Man and bad Spider-Man choices. Obviously, thanks to everybody watching and participating in the chat. You guys are great. And if you haven't already, please, you know, come check me out. I just dropped my review and analysis of the Black Label Birds of Prey. A couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, did a pretty hot one on the first couple issues of Donny Cates' Thor that did pretty well. And every week I do a comic book discussion live stream where we take you, the live audience's thoughts and questions into the live stream and involve those. So tomorrow I'm doing one with a part-time comic book journalist of sorts from I think it's the Comic Book Case, Taylor Pector, who is also a longtime viewer of my channel. And we're going to be discussing the greatest comic book adaptations of all time. So that's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So if you guys are interested in that, slide through, subscribe to the channel, and obviously make sure that you're subscribing to this guy over here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And again, thank you, everybody. You've all been awesome. Take care. Have a great day. And as always, stay geeky.